Friday, the 16th of September, 1994. Ruwa, Zimbabwe. It was mid-morning at the Ariel School. The children were on their break, running about. Teachers inside, drinking coffee. Beyond the playground, there was a rough patch of ground. Bush, trees, grass. The children were not allowed in that patch. Then some of them see something in the sky. Silver objects, low, moving strangely. One appears to come to near the edge of the school grounds. Some later say they saw small figures dressed in black. Some say the figures looked at them. Some say they got a message beamed directly into their mind. A warning about the planet, about technology, about what adults were doing to the world. There were no security cameras. There was no official alert. None of the teachers were standing beside them. Only the children. About a dozen of them. And a story they would repeat for the rest of their lives.
This is a recorded warning. This is a recorded warning. Across the skies of our world, objects appear. They defy origin. They defy explanation. From ancient carvings to modern radar, the pattern repeats. Witnesses speak. Authorities deny. Pilots track impossible craft. Soldiers log encounters. History records the same shapes under different names. What you are about to hear comes from buried reports, forgotten testimony, events written off and locked away. The skies remember. Listen closely. This is Unknown Skies.
Welcome back to the third episode of Unknown Skies. I hope you were able to catch Disclosure Day this week. I did a little review of it. There were spoilers towards the end of it. But even after I still been thinking about it, and I could probably talk another half hour to an hour about it, but I see a lot of other UFO pundits and podcasts are delving deep. So I'll let you pick up your delving deep from them. Probably for the best. You don't have to put up with my dulcet tones. So this week, as I promised, we are doing the Ariel School visitation. So those who don't know what the Ariel School was, or the visitation, or what people saw, this is going to be good. A lot of people will know, but hey, continue on, you'll hear my version of it. This takes us to Ruwa in Zimbabwe. The day, Friday the 16th of September, 1994. Of course, this is one of the most widely discussed UFO cases on record. The core claim is simple. 60 plus children reported seeing one or more unusual craft near the school grounds. Some reported seeing actual beings. Others described as silent communication like telepathy. There were no teachers out in the yard that day. They were all inside at a meeting or drinking coffee, as a lot of teachers do during a break time. So adults did not see what happened. But adults did hear the children almost immediately afterwards. This is where the case begins. Not with photography. Not with some sort of radar blip or blurry picture of a UAP in the sky. With actual testimony. Ariel School was a private school outside of Harare, I hope I'm saying that right, near Ruwa. On the morning of September 16th, the children were on their mid-morning break. The school grounds bordered with some bushland. The children reported that the landing area was close enough to see, but separate enough to feel out in the bush, in the boundary space. According to later accounts, the teachers were inside during a staff meeting. That leaves the first witness group as children, mostly between 6 and 12 years old. Of course, for those that don't believe in UFOs or don't believe in visitation, that's a major weakness. That children are the main witnesses. Children can be suggestible, I suppose. Children can also report bluntly before adults reshape the language. In this case, the first interviews and drawings became central to the record. Let's hear from one of the children describing what they saw to interviewer Cynthia Hind within a couple of days of the actual sighting.
And then we saw something shiny, so we all ran down over there.
And it was in the early morning?
It was at break time.
Yeah?
And then we saw something shiny. And we saw two people. They were in tight black suit. And they had big eyes. And we didn't actually see their nose, but it was quite small. And their mouth was quite small as well.
The point of the clip is not to prove the event, it's to establish a voice. A child describing something. Something outside of ordinary language. That's central to this case, because that's going to become really important. So the most common account, which was given by a lot of the children, was that they reported seeing one or more silver craft near the school. Accounts described objects coming down into the rough ground on the outskirts of the school, hovering rather than landing. And several children, they described small beings, black clothing, large dark eyes, faces that didn't feel human to them. Then there was some children that talked about being communicated with no speech. The message, as remembered in later interviews, was environmental. Technology is dangerous, the planet is being harmed, the world is in trouble. This is where the case becomes really difficult. If you push too hard, it becomes mythology. If you dismiss it too quickly, you erase what the witnesses say they experienced. The way to approach this is in separate layers. Layer 1. Many children reported seeing something unusual. Layer 2. Some children reported beings. Layer 3. Some children later interpreted a message. All those layers, of course, are connected. Children returned from their break, and of course the first thing they did is they went in and they told their teachers. Now if you're a teacher and some kid comes in and says, I saw a silver craft landing just outside the school grounds, you're probably going to laugh and try not to upset the child by not believing them. But when a lot of children come in, what do you do then? First, the report was not treated as a major event. The children did not have adult investigators swarming in and chatting to them. They did not walk into a prepared UFO story. They went home. They told their parents. The next day, parents came into school. At that point, the event became harder to dismiss. Within days, local and international press reached the school. BBC correspondent Tim Leach visited on Monday the 19th of September. He films interviews with the pupils and staff. Cynthia Hind, a Zimbabwean UFO researcher, visited the next day. She interviewed children, asked them to draw what they had seen. Those early drawings really matter because they sit close to the original event before the kids could be, I guess, their world could be opened up and things could be placed in their head with UFO lore. This is what happens when you're dealing with witnesses. More, I suppose, in the Western world, where we are bombarded with UFO stuff, films, media. We have an idea of what an alien will look like. We have an idea of what a UFO should be. But these children didn't. These children didn't have that idea. Let's go back to Cynthia Hines.
Now, the people in Africa don't have television. They might have a radio, but I can tell you the media don't deal with UFOs there. But nervous of it. So where would they pick it up? Is it a mass telepathy?
The drawings, which I'll put on our Instagram page, they're not proof. They're evidence, but they're only evidence of what the children believe they had seen. But they give the case its first physical record. November 1994, Harvard psychiatrist John E. Mack travelled to Zimbabwe. Mack was already a controversial figure because of his work with people who reported to be alien abductees, or, as they're now being called, experiencers. His involvement with the Ariel case gave it more visibility, but it also brought major baggage. Supporters saw such a high-level academic taking the children seriously. Critics saw a researcher already inclined towards extraterrestrial interpretation. Mack interviewed a selection of the children. He was struck by what he considered to be consistency and emotion that came from their accounts. He did not treat them as children simply telling him of some fantasy. He took them seriously. He treated them as witnesses to an event that affected them. This doesn't prove that the event was in any way extraterrestrial, but it does mean that the children were not processed as liars. They were listened to, and in a case that built almost entirely on their testimony, listening as part of the evidence trail. Let's hear from John Mack.
Describe these experiences or these events like a person talks about something that has happened to them. And when you're talking with a psychotic who's telling you something and it's a delusion and you feel that it really didn't happen, I can tell. I mean, I know this is something that the person wants me to believe, or they're frightened, or they're distorting reality in some way. There's nothing like that here. These are people of sound mind, by and large, telling me something that's very... They know that I might think they're crazy, and so they're a little concerned about telling me, and they're very full of questioning themselves and doubt, and I mean, and then they describe something very real and intense, a light or something happened to their body, or it's the whole quality of the way they talk about it is the way a person talks about experience that happened to them.
Mack's presence does not solve the case. It sharpens it. Because from that point on, Ariel School was no longer an incident. It was a global case. It was being looked at by UFO eyes across the world. So the strongest criticism is pretty obvious from here on. The witnesses were children. Children influence each other. A strange event can become a shared story quickly. One child's description can become another child's memory. Adults asking questions can unintentionally shape those answers, depending on the way they ask the questions. This is why the timing matters. The earliest accounts give the most weight. Later accounts, they need more caution because you can't be sure. The accounts within days hold weight. These later accounts, not because witnesses are dishonest, because memory is active. It changes through retelling, it absorbs language, it recognises fear into the story. The school sits directly inside that problem. The case has many witnesses, but the witness group is young. The accounts are vivid, to say the least, but some elements are extraordinary. The investigation happened quickly, but adult attention only arrived after the kids had spoken to each other. This is a honest problem. Any version that ignores it just can't be taken seriously. Even with those limits, several details return repeatedly. The object, silver and bright, that they saw in the sky and then over the bush. Movement near the school grounds. Figures with large dark eyes. Sense of being watched. And then there's the environmental message in some accounts. The witnesses are not all identical. They did not produce one perfect script. Perfect agreement would be, of course, very suspicious. The question is whether the variation points of the invention, or to multiply the children trying to describe human testimony varies. There was no clean answer, but the case survives because the central claim didn't vanish. Many of those children, as adults, continue to say something happened. Let's hear from Salma Siddick, one of the children who were there that day, in a 2017 interview.
There were very few people that I actually felt comfortable enough with there were few people that I felt actually were genuinely interested in what we had experienced, rather than just having a news story, if that makes sense. And even at 11, you can tell, like, people who are just, like, there to just talk to you and, okay, what did you see? Sort of going through the general questions. What did you see? What did you hear? You know, there were some people who were a lot more in depth, like Dr. Mack, and a few other people. I think there was an interview, a journalist from BBC who was different too, just in the approach. So I didn't always feel that people really, even journalists and professionals or, quote, experts at the time, really believed in what we had seen.
This is where Ariel becomes more than just a school story. It becomes a memory carried across decades. The environmental message is probably the most famous part. It's also the weakest part. For some listeners, that is the emotional core. For others, it sounds too shaped by possible adult interpretation. We do not need to decide whether a message was sent. We can say witnesses reported experience of communication. We can't say the communication was later described in environmental terms. We can't say that these themes appear in Mac's interviews and, of course, the later accounts. But we should not make the episode about a sermon from the sky. That would undermine the whole story. And the story is simpler. A group of children saw something. They felt seen by it. They felt warned by it. And the warning, whether external or internal, stayed with them. Of course, there are possible conventional explanations. Misidentified aircraft, swamp gas, whatever people like to pull in. Aerial objects connected with regional sightings. Of course, it could be mass suggestion. Playground contagion. Religious or folklore framing. A story that grew under questioning. None of that should be dismissed. None of the teachers saw this event. There's no photography, no radar, no objects were recovered. Of course, that matters, because that is 99% of most cases. But conventional explanations also have limits. They have to explain why so many children reported the events so quickly. They must explain the emotional force, the drawings, and why witnesses held to the account into adulthood. This case is not strong due to its technical data. It's strong because witnesses believe. It's strong because witnesses believe, there's early documentation, and there's persistence of the same story. Let's return to John Mack.
They experienced very powerful encounters with these beings and were left with the rather disturbing fact that this seems to be what it is, and it seems to have no other psychiatric explanation.
The value is not drama. The value is directiveness. So where does the Ariel School case stand? It's not a radar case. It's not a military case. It's not a photographic case. It's a testimony case. Makes it vulnerable. Gives it probably the least evidence as any other case. So why was it so difficult to erase? The solid record is this. On Friday the 16th of September 1994, at the Ariel School near Ruwa in Zimbabwe, a large group of children had an extraordinary encounter during the morning break. Adults heard about it quickly. BBC interviews followed in days. Cynthia Hine documented accounts and drawings. Jack Mack interviewed witnesses later that year. Former pupils have continued to describe the event as real. What they saw remains unresolved. What they experienced clearly mattered. The case asks hard questions. How much weight should we give children when their testimony is detailed, repeated, and emotionally consistent? But then it's unsupported by hard physical evidence. This is not a comfortable question, but it's a question that this case leaves behind. By the end of the school day, of course, the playground was ordinary again. Children went home, teachers returned to routine. Parents asked questions, but for the witnesses, the morning did not close. Ariel School became a fixed point in their lives. Place where childhood memory, public mystery locked together. No object remains, no official answer settles it. Only the voices, the drawings, the repeated claims. We saw something. It looked at us, and it changed the way we think. We look at the world. That was tonight's case file. Ariel School, Ruwa, Zimbabwe. 16th of September 1994. Next time, we travel down under to Australia. A schoolyard in Melbourne. Hundreds of witnesses. A daylight sighting. And decades of silence after the bell rang.
What you have heard is not speculation. It is documented. Stories passed down. Sightings logged. Questions left unanswered. From ancient skies to modern encounters, the pattern holds. Some reports fade, but others endure. Unknown Skies is part of the Causeway podcast network. Original stories, built for listeners who keep asking why. More transmissions will follow. Until then, watch the skies. Listen for the signal, because they are watching us.
Unknown Skies is part of the Causeway podcast network. Other podcasts include Irish Gothic and Hostage to the Devil. Look for them wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, we're just building this podcast up from episode 1, which you just heard. But if you get a chance, wherever you listen, please leave us 5 stars. It helps and gives us motivation to continue.